So what makes an emotional tragic short film? Well, usually I feel like it's like the small details, like the quiet details. Let's say like a look, a pause, or just like something that's left unsaid. So when a film captures that feeling, but like I've had that feeling, but I've never put into words. I feel like it stays with me because I connect more when the pain isn't performed like loudly, but it's shown in like tiny ways. How people break.
Show a person struggling, conflict, really human emotions, people making mistakes and then learning from them, and sometimes saying things in the heat of the moment, or death or tragic events.
When I think of an emotional tragic short film, I think the elements that resonate with me personally would be mental health and just young adults growing up. I feel like a lot of the movies now either make the problems too much to the point that the whole movie turns into solving the problem rather at keeping it an important part. The balance is missed a lot. I really like films that explore things like grief, loss, illness, and mental health because it puts a point that yes, these things exist in our society, it exists in people, and it will always be an existing point.
Usually, I think that when movies like really focus on a character's relationship with other characters, like the tragedy or the emotional aspect of a story being told is really amplified by the like a specific character's dynamic with other characters and how they perceive their relationship with other characters or how it's supposed to come across to the audience. Like there's so many characters where you think that they have like a certain way in which they believe themselves to be around their friends, as in like they seem to think that they're not really a part of a friend group maybe, or they seem to think that their relationships are like bound to fail or something. But then I really love when it also, like the movie or the show or whatever, also shows a whole perspective of the other characters, like where they're basically showing that these thoughts or these insecurities really are just that, they're insecurities. And I think that really hits hard for me, where it's like this reassurance that the main character doesn't have anything wrong with them, it's just their perception of that. So I think like in general, like a lot of emotional scenes or movies or stuff like that, I tend to focus more on how they're interacting with other people and how those other people are also like there's always this like climactic moment where they reveal that they did actually like them, or that they're just worried about them. And this in their whole bout of insecurities, the main character has been separating themselves from their friends maybe. Like I know that's a little specific, but it's really about what the characters are doing with other people. Like it's not I don't like stories that are just centered around one main character. I like a whole friend group, or I like a sort of found family situation, something like that. Like I think that can really have a lot of potential for emotional moments and stuff.
And I think what's missing is the fact that films don't really show how complex, when you're becoming a teenager, the feelings of the person becoming a teenager, as well as how it's a struggle for them to fit in, and then their family trying to accommodate them, and etc. So it's something that doesn't show up. Mostly the shows you see are just like somebody who's rich or whatever, and they find someone, and it's mostly like love interest focused, but it doesn't really show emotions.
I think that you can't really cater to a whole group of people because everybody's experiences are different. But there should be more stories that do focus on different aspects of everything. Like a lot of the times you expect people to have the same kind of problems because they have the same disability maybe. Like a lot of the times you see the side of the story with people that have ADHD, where they're just they're struggling because of being so hyperactive, and they're struggling because of too much spontaneity in their life, or because of not being able to stay in one place, or their relationships also seem to suffer from their impulsivity and all that. But they never really focus on how at times it can also make you completely drained, and then that also affects relationships where your friends are they're like into wanting to do a lot of fun stuff, and you're just kind of feeling like you're older than them because you feel like an older person because you're just tired all the time, or you can't really care about things that other teenagers seem to care about. Like I think that's the story that really matters, is that it's not just about like coming of age stories about loneliness or stuff like that. It's about coming of age stories where you feel like you're othered, and not just in a way that's like I'm not really sure how to explain it. It's just that a lot of the time stories that focus on people that are othered they all follow kind of the same script. Where eventually at the conclusion of the movie, it's always like, oh wait, I do actually have friends and I do actually have people that care about me. But a lot of the times they show people that are like they kind of hate the whole idea of being loud or being fun or doing stuff all the time. But they never really focus on how you when people want to do that, when they want to be loud and fun, but it's really hard for them to be like, and they feel like they're separated from their friends. Then even though they are there and they are involved, like I feel like that's also a little too specific maybe. But I do think that movies need to and shows need to like focus more on other aspects of people that are disabled or people that have any sort of like mental setback or problem. Like there's a very specific kind of script that all of these movies follow, and I've very rarely seen any shows or movies that kind of look at the whole other aspect of it, where they're not really focused on the idea of people being like overcoming their self-worth problems or things like that. I want like a really good example is Thunderbolts. Like the ending of that movie was not exactly like Bob being fixed. It wasn't like people being fixed. It wasn't people like winning. And I don't want that to be like a motivation to have room for a sequel. Like I want that to be just like the conclusion of the movie is that there is no conclusion, because problems don't just get fixed over the span of one movie, really.
I feel like I'm drawn to them when they're honest. So these themes do hit hard um, grief, loss, illness, mental health, because they're things people usually like carry very quietly with themselves. And then when a film like lets those feelings breathe instead of like just trying to fix them, I kind of lean in towards that.
I like films about loss and everything, but at the same time, I feel like now, for me, because I'm at the 25 to 30 age bracket, they feel too heavy. So it's not something that I wouldn't watch, but it's something that I would not watch like when I'm having dinner or like on a daily basis.
Grief believable is how authentic the characters are and how messy they are, because grief is never sterile and clean cut. It's always very intricate, and it's complicated, and it's messy, and it's flawed, and the way that the characters experience grief itself is also extremely messy. Extremely, it's not as simple as crying or mourning or whatever. Grief shows up very differently in different people, and so an accurate portrayal of grief must encompass that fact.
Like grief, loss, and mental illness and stuff like that. Like they really help people feel like they're not a huge problem in society. It helps them feel not alone. So I think these movies are really, really important, but only when they're done right. Like it's bad to like make the villain somebody who's very clearly like an allegory or a metaphor for some kind of mental illness or some kind of like problem. But I do think that media needs more villains that have just problems. Like it's not really villains, more like anti-heroes where they think they're doing the right thing. And I think that's really important because a lot of the times like people who do end up messing up their own lives or messing up other people's lives, I think sometimes they're people that don't realize they're doing the wrong thing and they don't want to be doing the wrong thing. They just always happen to be doing the wrong thing, and then they later on realize that, and then they feel like really guilty about it or they regret it a lot. And I think that a lot of movies need to sort of focus on that aspect of that too. Like I want more bad guys that aren't really just classic bad guys. Like I think that movies that do focus on all these problems, mental illness and all that, I don't think they always have to be coming of age films or young adult films or like things about teenagers. I think there can be a movie about a 40-year-old figuring it out, and there can be a movie about somebody who believes they are fully the villain, but then realizes that maybe they're not. And I think that there's a lot of potential to work around with topics like that.
I think that stories emotional short stories between two girls are usually more impactful and powerful compared to that of two men, is because the relationship between two women is entirely different than between that of two men, generally speaking, because men are socialized to be more stoic and not talk about their emotions, and they're not aware of them to begin with, while women are much more open to talking about how they feel and how they feel about their friends themselves. So I think there's a level of intimacy that two women and a relationship between two women can achieve that a relationship between a man or a woman or two men, usually, obviously I'm generalizing, but that sort of intimacy is rarely ever seen in relationships between men. And it's girls usually need other girls to function in society.
I love when a movie has stories about close friendships, especially women, because a lot of media do not show you women being together. A lot of media has a lot of either two girls fighting with each other over a guy, or jealousy or competition, or just competition as a whole. You don't see media with two women just having fun together and bonding together. It's really hard to get in today's movies.
Question number 4. I personally think that would be such a good concept to do, and yeah, it would be very emotionally powerful because most movies from what we've seen, girls' friendship and girl groups are mostly usually shown as as the mean girls or the bullies, and Sai friendships coming of age movies, they always show friendship between a boy and a girl. Like they help out each other to grow as a person and stuff. There's very less ones that do it with two girls, and girls have so much to connect together, like emotional trauma, bonding, family trauma, like societal standards and they have so much to relate to together. It would be so much better to see two girls helping each other out and power through all of that. Movies and shows about friendships are like my favorite types of media, like of all time. And I think friendships between like girls especially, those movies just hit the hardest, I think. Like I don't feel like I can really fully relate to them, but there's so many like movies and shows about this sort of fun dynamic that boys have between them. And once again, they always kind of follow a similar script. But the few like movies like Booksmart maybe that follow friendships between girls, like I feel like they're much, much richer at times. And they like explore so many different kinds of topics that teenagers in America especially like experience and all that. And I do think there should be a lot more media about it, because for a while there was just the sort of rhetoric of like movies being about boys and being about like friendships between them and their dynamics. Like one of my favorite movies is Dead Poets Society. That's about like all these kinds of friendships and relationships. And I think that there can be a similar idea with girls as well. And like it doesn't have to be this kind of stereotypical thing. Like it doesn't have to follow this one idea of what a friendship between girls is meant to look like, and it doesn't always need a conflict that's like between them. I really don't like that when in movies there's like there's two friends and they're girls and there always has to be some kind of a conflict between them, and unfortunately most of the time that conflict is like, oh, this I want my friend to focus more on me than on like maybe the boy she likes or whatever. And I don't want that to be a conflict. I want them to be like a duo or maybe a trio, and then they're dealing with the conflict with each other. Like I want there to be a whole separate conflict. I think that's why I like fantasy and adventure stuff more, because I like there to be some kind of substance that's holding together the concept of like movies about friendship, where you're like, yeah, sure, this movie is about overcoming some evil overlord, but it's also about this dynamic between these two girls. Like I like
The relationship portrayed between two women is powerful because we exist in a culture where, you know, women are pitted against women, and where women are pitted against women, and you know, it's you're constantly told to be jealous or envious or whatever of other women. So you know, seeing a close friendship is powerful, and most of us, especially in the Pakistani culture, we don't really have female friendships or long-lasting female friendships. So you know, it's a good portrayal to show that you know you need friends, and you need to have good friends, and it's a very powerful feeling.
I feel like close friendships, I would say yes, because these bonds often run deeper than people realize, yeah, right? So girl friendships are very sacred, and like in their intensity, the loyalty, the softness, the protectiveness, it's just everything mixed together. So I feel like when something kind of threatens that bond, that emotional fallout really feels real. Okay, so realistic youth portrayal is very important because I want to see the flaws, the contradictions, the impulsiveness, that fear. So real teens aren't really polished, right? So they're figuring things out in real time. And when a film shows that, I specifically like just feel seen.
I think it's really important to see youth portrayed realistically because then if everything is done according to a film perspective, then it overshadows the point that, like I said before, that these things actually exist. And just because they are not that in front does not mean that they do not exist.
So I feel like soft or natural light usually feels more intimate to me. So I feel like I engage more with emotional stories because of that. So shadows and late afternoon warmth or dim places where emotions feel like heavy. So symbolic lighting works better if it reflects like the character's inner state instead of just being like a decorative.
I've personally come at a point in my life where I prefer a bit of a nostalgic style, use of colors, etc., rather than something which is bright and flashy or it's too, I don't know, too hyper 2024 or realistic.
I really like darker tones. I like when, if it's like a grief-filled scene, then the lights become a bit dark. It helps you also envision the sadness. It just adds on to the movie, I feel.
Okay, for question 8, I love when movies play around with the lighting so much. Like, I'd say visual style should depend on a key theme. Yeah, like if it's a person being depressed, darker themes okay. Varna, if it's a happy indie type of movie or coming of age, you do bright, colorful vibes. And if it's a change, like a person going from depressed to accepting their life and becoming happier, you go from dark to light, like throughout the movie आप arrange करें. It's so fun, like to see the change. Like for example, if you've seen, I forgot the movie name. Right, La La Land. Like you can see के शुरू में they both have very separate, like one of the most powerful scenes in it, they have the lighting in it is separate. Like the guy, he has blue lighting all over him and the girl has pink, and then in the end where they finally see each other for the last time, there's purple lighting, and I think that's so fun. So I really I get full emotional impact के लिए the lighting and stuff should match with the theme and what you're trying to express.
I like stories which are a 50-50 of both, not too much reliant on symbolism or not too much reliant on dialogues, because both of these things make it harder. When it's more reliant on symbolism, you have to decode, and then the film becomes what you think of, and it's like a cliffhanger, never-ending cliffhanger. And when it's more dialogue, it's just boring. Like all these aspects, visuals and symbols, but also dialogue, are like really, really important for a film, which is kind of obvious. But I don't think the dialogue has to be like obviously deep or emotional or anything. I think that sometimes even the most simple dialogue can be really effective, especially if it's paired with the right visuals and the right audio. Like this, the soundtrack of a movie or the music, the score basically is like really, really important, I think, because that's a very subtle thing that people connect with. Like if there's an emotional scene, but there's like really jolly music going on in the background, like Christmas style or whatever, like that's gonna make you feel weird, kind of. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Maybe that can also be used in a specific way, because a lot of scenes that have like a fun song playing in the background, but then there's like a really dramatic scene going on or something, that can make you feel like it can make it feel a lot more realistic. Because in real life, you don't really have a choice on what kind of music is going on. Like I love the idea of a restaurant playing some kind of music that's really light, and then outside of the restaurant, there's a whole conflict going on. I think like that specific scenario, something like that, can be really, really impactful. So like music and then lighting, of course, like
dark tones around something that's meant to be like a more cheerful scene. I like contrasting things, like we don't really notice it the first time around, but it does make you feel like that the situation is a lot deeper than it like seems to be in like face value. Like I think that like I said, music and colors a lot, like colors really matter a lot. And like colors of like how the background is colored can be different from how the foreground is colored, I think. And then the dialogue needs to like, I think the dialogue really matters only if you're like pairing it with the right aesthetics and the right themes around the characters. Like what the characters are wearing matters a lot in a specific scene. Like it really is a whole thing that comes together. I don't think there can be an aspect that works without the other. I don't think there can be dialogue that's impactful enough without things in the background, without color, without music. And I don't think that themes or colors or music can be really impactful if the dialogue isn't right. Like dialogue doesn't have to be really long, or it doesn't have to spell out things for you. I think sometimes simplistic dialogue is the best. I really like it when a movie doesn't really focus on making the characters say things. It's more of a show don't tell. Exactly, like how the character is saying something matters more than what the character is saying.
I really like symbolism, but sometimes I feel like people are unable to portray it properly, so it gets really confusing. There should be a lot of symbolism, but it should be in a way that people are able to decipher it, but at the same time, they can also have their own perspective on it.
Number 9, do you prefer stories that rely more on visuals, symbolism, and atmosphere, or ones that rely heavily on dialogue? I do not like movies which rely heavily on dialogues because for some reason they only remind me of rom-com because those are the ones generally which have a lot of dialogue and are dialogue heavy. I really love when there's a lot of symbolism and visuals in movies and films.
Question 9, I think in a movie, the visuals and symbolisms are so much more important than the dialogues because humans don't really talk बहुत ही flowery or literative way में real life में, so it's not really needed in a movie to make it feel कि मैं उससे more connect कर पाऊँ and feel more human. Simple, normal क्या कहते हैं, बहुत ही simple से dialogues चल जाते हैं. It's more the visual impacts that have a deeper effect on you. What creates a believable bond between characters? I think it's the openness and flaws or how the how the characters interact. Like I'm watching the show called Never Have I Ever, and it's just so annoying to watch because I feel like that's just not how things happen in real life or people talk. I don't know.
I think the characters on screen should also have a good bonding off screen, as it really shows that, oh, you're comfortable with your coworker, and it's showing in the movie as well. I personally really like tragic or ambiguous endings because it's like a cliffhanger and it gives the audience a way to imagine the ending on their own from how they perceive the movie. I feel like if a movie is about dealing with grief, then it shows that sometimes you do lose people and that's okay. And it's more on how to get back yourself rather than get back the people. And that chasing ghosts from your past will always end up in you losing yourself.
I prefer all kinds of ending. I just don't like poetic endings. I don't know. That's just too much decoding and I don't have the brain to process.
I really love ambiguous endings because it makes me keep thinking about it over and over again and all the possible ways it could have ended. 500 Days of Summer has an ambiguous ending, and you never really know what happens, and that keeps you thinking about it way more than any other movie.
Question 10. If I'm getting it right, non-linear means that your timelines are jumping from like the past to the present and stuff, right? I think that's really fun. I like when a movie does that. But it shouldn't be overdone because sometimes it gets way too confusing. कि आप पूरी different characters की stories at the same time चला रहे हो. Like दो characters का तब भी समझ में आता है, मगर आप बहुत सारे characters को साथ ले आते हो ना कि इसकी भी एक life चल रही है, इसकी भी all at the same time and we're jumping between them. It gets confusing. But if you're jumping between एक ही बंदे की past or present, or या तो दो people who are connected उनकी simultaneously, that's kind of fun to watch. I personally prefer non-linear stories, like something which starts from the middle or from the end, and then you rewind it and you tell the story. So I think that makes more sense.
I really love when there are two timelines happening at the same time and when it switches between the two. And when it starts with something which makes no sense and then in the end all of it makes sense. I love that.
For question 13, I'd have two outcomes in mind. एक तो कि the person finally realizes कि dwelling on the past and all, it's useless, it's not coming back, and they finally have the courage enough to move on. Varna, I'd want कि the depression and everything eats at them. It just eats away at them, like a final sad conclusion, like suicide or something. It's so fun कि like the ending could be कि they're drowning in the water and all of the scenes of the past, which they love so much, they're coming back in their mind, something that they just can't get back. It's so powerful.
So the emotional takeaway I do expect is a sense of like acceptance, not a solution, just the truth that some people stay with us even when they're gone. Like I want to walk away feeling the weight of what we lost, but also the quiet strength of moving forward. I feel like not a lot of people can mix that together.
The takeaway from Chasing Ghosts from the Past reminds me of this song called Chasing Cars. I don't know, it just makes me really sad and emotional, and I'm like, because I've been at a place in my life where I have chased ghosts, so it reminds me of that and the grief and the struggle and how I was just so stupid.